In what might be termed a sharp turn against human rights and personal freedoms, Burkina Faso's parliament has officially enacted legislation criminalizing homosexuality. This new law stipulates severe penalties, with offenders facing prison terms ranging from 2 to 5 years, as well as substantial fines. The law was passed unanimously on Monday by the nation's transitional parliament, which notably operates without electoral mandate following military coups that took power in 2022. This legislation updates the family and the citizenship framework of Burkina Faso, a West African nation home to about 23 million people. The Justice Minister, Edaso Rodrigue Bayala, declared on state television that the law was designed to affirm marriage and family values and described homosexual acts as bizarre behavior. The law also mandates the deportation of foreign nationals found guilty of violating these rules. Bayala warned offenders that they will go before the judge, signaling strict enforcement. Now, before this law, Burkina Faso was among the 22 African nations without explicit prohibitions on same-sex relationships. The new law places it alongside more than half of Africa's countries where homosexuality is criminalized, sometimes with penalties as extreme as a death penalty. This move aligns with a growing wave of tightened restrictions on LGBTQ+ rights across the continent, exemplified recently by Mali's similar legislation in 2024 and reinforced by stringent laws in neighboring Ghana and Uganda. Burkina Faso's current military leadership claims the crackdown supports traditional and religious values and resists what they deem as foreign influences on African culture. However, human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have strongly condemned this law as a blatant violation of human dignity and equality. The law is viewed internationally as discriminatory and a dangerous setback for civil liberties in the region. Mr. Ako, Christian, how would you take this development? See it as something good or something bad, something against human rights, something against just a freedom for morality?
Yes, the ban against all forms of homosexuality is a welcome development. As a matter of fact, homosexualism have no place in the African tradition. Nobody fell from the sky, right? We all came from somewhere, we came from a certain background. We as Africans, we have our tradition, we have our orientation, we have our culture. So there is no place in our culture, in our tradition, for homosexualism. We understand procreation from even angle of religiosity. There is no space for homosexualism in the context of religion, in both Christianity and Islam. None give room for homosexualism. God was believed to have created a man and a woman. And it is expected that these two come together to raise offspring for themselves. By extension, raising families. So, how can a man and a man be able to come together and raise family? Or how can a woman and a woman come together to raise family? This is an aberration. It is a testament that when the brain is malfunctioned, you begin to think out of the norm. It goes beyond the norm to start thinking abnormally. And that is what I can best describe as what they are calling homosexualism. It's a brain damage on the part of the Western culture, the Western world, that are thinking something abnormal to become the norm for their society, and they expect that the global community should accept it hook, line, and sinker. So I commend Ibrahim Traore for standing his ground. and ensuring that there is legislation put in place to ban all forms of homosexualism. The entire African countries are encouraged to put up legislation, if there are none, to ban all forms of homosexualism. These are things that infiltrate our culture. In the life of our people, there is no record where our forefathers practiced homosexualism. So why now? That's my question. Why now? So cultural infiltration should not amount to homosexualism in the African context. There is no room for homosexuality, and anyone caught should be adequately dealt with. That's my submission. So
Right. This is something that should be
in terms of
commendable.
whether it has to do with human rights or otherwise, yes, rights have limits, right? Your right to practice certain things should not affect your host community. So there's a saying that when you go to Rome, you behave like a Roman. This is Africa. Africa has no space for homosexualism, and the world must acknowledge this. Thank you.
But how do you take the argument that since two persons agree to indulge in that act, why should criminalize it? Just as what happened in Guinea, the man that was alleged to have slept with hundreds of women, and then later the court ruled that the connivance or the interactionship was consensual, and then waved that aside. So how would you take the argument that a government should not criminalize this? Because if two persons, regardless of their gender, come together and agree to do something, why would you, hamper that relationship?
Yes, there's what we call modus of operandum. In the context of the African tradition, it gives room for a man to have multiple wives, right? So that case of Guinea, it can be considered as consensual in that regard, that they were adults, they did not raise alarm, meaning that they agreed to whatever was put forward to them as approach from the Guinean government official. But the argument there in his own case is that carrying out such dastard acts in public environment, in public office, that is the problem. If he had had an arrangement or a conversation around private facilities in his home where he's living, it's a welcome development. For instance, even in the office, if the government is aware that that is where he is living officially as a resident, it's a different ballgame. But entirely office residents being converted into, having multiple affairs is condemnable in that regard. Then coming to the homosexual criminalization in Burkina Faso, which by extension I'm encouraging other African countries to actually do same, is that in the context of the African culture, tradition, beliefs, ethics, there is no room for homosexuality. Historically, there is no trace of homosexuality. And the Western culture cannot come and dictate for the African culture. We have our culture. So we are standing by it. And the culture of the African race must be respected. There is no part in Africa where homosexualism is given the nod. So why would the Western culture want to impose it on Africa? I know whatever they like, they find a way to encourage it through NGOs, through under the guise of human rights advocate and all that, but it will not fly because there is no place for homosexualism in African context, in African tradition, in African belief system, in African heritage. There's nothing like homosexualism. So it will never stand.
All right. Okay. Well, wonderful. Mr. Ibrahim, how would you receive this news?
Okay, let me start by reiterating the fact that we are social animals. So the reason why we are different from donkeys, from cows, from horses is that we are social animals. And far from being alone in this world to do as you wish, you belong to the body of a society. And basically, I'm looking at it from different lens. Like there is no moral ground for you to compare a man sleeping with multiple women and a man marrying a man. For example, homosexuality and for example, idolatry and fornication. There is a difference. The basic upon which the logic rather upon which people condemn idolatry and fornication is the fact that it affects the basic core of human existence, which is the family. If I am allowed to sleep with multiple women and they give birth, most of these women will not know who their father is and will be not lesser than animals. Then what of homosexuality? Homosexuality is worse because it poses an existential threat to the existence of humanity on planet Earth generally. Take, for example, take 100 people that are homosexual and take 100 people that are heterosexual, put them in an island, put the homosexual in a separate island and put the heterosexual in a separate island. Come back after 200 years. In the island of the homosexuals, you find out bones because they are all dead. In the island of the heterosexuals, you find thousands of people living and existing. So homosexuality in its totality poses an existential threat to the existence of humanity on planet Earth. And how dare Western world that they think that they have the right to define what is right for humans everywhere in the world. We as African people, we have the right to protect our own tradition. We are traditional people. And we should have a barricade on some things that no one will dictate for us. It's basically accepting everything that the Western world bring on us. Is basically saying we don't have anything to stand on. And is an utter absurdity. Africans have been existing on planet Earth the same way as the Europeans. According to science, humanity even began in Africa. So why should we accept everything they bring on us, whether it is rational or irrational? I'm not condemning everything that the Europeans bring, but we should have that sense that we know what is good for us and what is bad for us, learn from the good things they bring, and discard what is bad. So basically, I welcome this idea of criminalizing homosexuality in Africa. Within the context of Africa, we as traditional society, we have the rights to our existence and continuity. So once we accept homosexuality, it's at the detriment of the heterosexuals. Because today, homosexuals are not just practicing their homosexuality, they are advocating for homosexuality, even advocating in primary school, kindergartens, and secondary school, exposing this dangerous narrative to the people that doesn't have even the intellectual maturity to dissect what is right and wrong for themselves. So luring people into this dangerous territory should be stopped, most especially for us in Africa. It does not conflict with any human rights. By the way, we have the right, we know what is right for humans. It mustn't be dictated by the Western world in all cases, right? So I welcome it, and for me, it has nothing to do with human rights. Humanity have been in existence for millions of years, and homosexuality have been a condemnable act for millions of years, and that's why we are still existing. Even the homosexuals were being born by heterosexuals. Without heterosexuals, they will not exist in the first place. That's my stand.
But do you think, do you believe that all the elements of that LGBTQ should be outlawed, because homosexuality is just one element amongst there are others. We have transgender, we have other things. So do you believe that they share this equality when it comes to the gravity of that, what we call offense? Do you think that all of them, all the elements in that phrase should be outlawed? Or are there ones that are less in terms of gravity or the graveness of the absurdity?
All right, for me, they are all absurd. Can you imagine you sleeping with your own biological sister? It does not make sense, right? Even according to the European terms, they acknowledge that what are they calling it in English? I forget the name. You sleeping with your own biological sister or your own biological mother. So it is the same.
Incest. It's called incest.
Yeah, incest. They acknowledge that incest is bad. Why are they acknowledging homosexuality? Well, it carries, for me, more weight of destruction to human race than incest. So transgender, you talk about transgender, LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, homosexual, transgender, and a lot of things that they like to call. Transgender is even more destructive because it's the zenith of confusion. You saying I'm a man, but I feel that I'm a woman, right? And you will go and start appearing like a woman. Or a woman say, I feel like I'm a man. And it is causing a lot of chaos. A man will just pretend that he is a woman, while biologically he is wired to become a man. And they said he has the right to enter a woman's toilet, share a woman's bathroom, and so on and so forth. And we have a lot of issues of raping because he's biologically wired as a man. It is his own confusion that makes him to think that he is a woman. He needs, what are they calling them? Therapists. He needs therapists. He needs medical attention, rather than this absurd pretense that we should accept them the way they feel they are. And men are competing with women in women's sports, and they are dominating women's sports because men are physically more stronger than women. So this absurdity should stop. But clearly, it's not working. A man, for example, if you die now, let's shift to science. I know most of these people believe in science. Let's shift to science. When you die, after 1,000 years, for example, when they dig your own bones, they do DNA tests, right? They will realize that you are either a man or a woman. That means it is being ingrained in every fiber of your existence that you are a man or a woman. Basically denying that you are a man while you are biologically a man is contradicting nature and science. So that pretense should stop. And by the way, humanity have been existing for years. My main problem with them is that no, they should exist. If they feel that you are a man, you feel you are a woman, you have the right to exist. It has nothing to do with me. If you believe that you marry a man, you should exist. But stop pushing the narrative on others. I have the right also to raise my children the way I want them to be raised. So their rights stop when they start imposing their right on others, when it starts eroding the right of others. I think it's making sense because based on the concept of democracy, majority rule. If the vast majority of people of Burkina Faso decide that we don't want homosexuality, why are you imposing homosexuality on them? When the vast majority of Africans said we don't want homosexuality, why are you imposing homosexuality on them? Then if you don't believe in the concept of democracy, pack that whole idea of democracy and put it in a dustbin bag. That's the best way because it is clearly double standard and hypocrisy. While you say majority rule, you are trying to impose the will of the minority on the will of the majority. This is clearly hypocrisy.
All right, thank you very much. Democracy, this is very interesting, especially coming from a country that is no longer democratic. Ibrahim Traore's reign so far has been sweet. You know, so many improvements, so many introductions, so many developments which have been in place since he mounted power. I don't think, some citizens in democratic countries in Africa might be eyeing or might be admiring his government or his country now, currently, regardless of the way or the manner in which he took over power. It doesn't matter. What matters is what dividends have you brought? What results have you shown? President Ibrahim Traore's leadership in Burkina Faso marks a story of dogged achievement amid immense challenges. Now known as one of Africa's youngest heads of state, he has bravely tackled the dire jihadist insurgency threatening much of this country, pushing to reconquer rebel-held territories. Traore's administration has taken bold steps toward economic sovereignty, including inaugurating the country's first gold refinery and rejecting Western financial aid to break free from neo-colonial dependence. His efforts to expel French troops and seek diversified international partnerships reflect a strong nationalist vision. Furthermore, Traore and his ministers have demonstrated personal sacrifice by reducing salaries and directing funds to aid displaced citizens. However, these achievements are being marred by controversial moves, such as the extended military rule and endorsing the recent law criminalizing homosexuality, which starkly undermines civil liberties and contradicts his progressive image, according to some human rights groups. So while Traore has impressed with his resolve and infrastructure initiatives, the recent crackdown on LGBTQ plus rights signals, some people will say authoritarian overreach and risks alienating Burkina Faso from global human rights standards. Anyway, we continue to see the new developments coming from Burkina Faso and how Africans, by the way, before we leave, Mr. Due Process, Mr. Akko Christian, Ochi, as you call yourself, what things do you think African countries, especially democracies like Nigeria, should emulate from this young man ruling Burkina Faso? Because he has been doing much, pretty well since he mounted power.
Yes, what is expected is for African leaders to embrace Africanism. They have to put the African mantra ahead of whatever policy, whatever laws they are putting together. They should understand local contents, right? The African tradition cannot be erased. In whatever laws we are trying to make for our people, or whatever policy we are trying to accommodate, African leaders should understand that it's not every policy of European countries that are suitable to Africa. We have our own tradition, and that cannot be relegated to the backdrop. We must stand by our tradition in whatever we do, ensuring that the tradition of the people are respected. There is no position, there is no space, there is no room for that rascality, otherwise referred to as homosexuality. If the entire African countries were to have adopted homosexualism, of course, African population will have deflated, will have run down the entire continent without a replacement. So heterosexuality gives room for paved way for procreation. Procreation continues to ensure that African continent grow in number. And homosexualism will bring the number to stagnant. Then at the end of the day, the entire population will perish without procreation. So that is not what we expected. That's not what we look up to. God did not, by design of the universe, there is no room for homosexuality. It's just the creation of few Western powers that feel they want to have a change or a reset of the system, which is not possible. So African leaders, they should understand that their number one reason for political power is the people, not foreign interests. This must occupy the front burner of whatever policy that is being implemented. That's my summation.
Yes.
More to what he said, I believe Africans as a continent, if we want to get a sustainable change in Africa, we have to consider these three factors. Number one, we should learn from our own tradition, follow our own history closely and learn from it. I believe that's what the Europeans did during the Renaissance. They learned from their history, their mistakes, and they do better from there. Number two, we should be open to learn from everyone who has anything to teach, not just the Western world, but any other person who has anything to teach in the world. You look at the Western world, today we call the education we are practicing Western education. Most of the things they have in the Western education is borrowed from other part of the world. So clearly they were open to learn from other people in the first place, which gave them an edge over those people. Then the last but not the least is to domesticate what we learn from others. Domesticating it is making it to become our own. If I learn something from you, I take it and make it my own, brand it as mine. That's the last thing we're supposed to do. Because freedom is not given. It is not a gift given. It is a state earned through struggle and persistence. And we have to be, should I say, decisive in pursuing freedom. We have to be constructive in trying to achieve our goals. So African leaders should forget about all these elevated words, democracy, freedom, human rights, and all of that. We should find an independent political structure, military structure, and economic structure if we are serious about freeing Africa.
Yes, while we are talking, I just remember that while some countries are outlawing homosexuality and other elements in the LGBTQ, other countries are, diligently and, pleasurably accepting this norm. Earlier this year, we know that Thailand, made that norm lawful, or made that policy lawful in their country. And we saw videos of how citizens celebrated that homosexual marriages and LGBTQ. So now I'm asking, are these countries that are accepting LGBTQ, are they doing it because they want to have some kind of economic favor from the West, or what, Ibrahim?
Sure, definitely, and that's the facts. I said something. There's a lot of way to make Africans or the countries in the fast global south into submission or conceding what you want them to concede. Number one is through economic gain, clearly. The government of Nigeria was offered previously a couple of billions of dollars if they are going to sign into law the LGBTQ principle. The number one thing is economic gain. Number two, I'm not even against LGBTQ completely, but let the people decide. It's up to the people. Don't come from Western world to dictate what is right for us here in Nigeria. You're basically insulting our own intelligence. You're insulting us as humans, that we don't know what is right and wrong until you come and tell us what is right and wrong. So we know what is right and wrong. We know our interests, we know our enemies, and all these pretense should stop. If Africans, for example, you say the people of Thailand celebrated their government signing into law the LGBTQ, that signifies that the vast majority of people accept it. So even without the economic gain, if the people accept it, the principle of democracy is majority rule, right? If the majority rule, I don't have any problem with it. But trying to impose the will of the minority on the majority, that's what I don't understand.
All right, thank you very much. That is all we have for you today, viewers, on this morning TV show from DDM TV. I'm Tochku Raphael. I thank you, Mr. Ibrahim and Mr. Christian Ako, convener, Due Process Integrity Vanguard. Viewers, see you tomorrow for the last edition of this week's DDM Morning Show. From me, Tochku Raphael. Bye-bye.